Good morning. So, I've decided that I need to start doing a little bit more with my YouTube channel. Specifically, I am going to start doing book reviews and TBRs because, well, I love reading. So, it only makes sense that I would start sharing that with other people. Um, so, my first book review is going to be Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Keep wanting to say school, but it's a home. Um, so it's by Ransom Riggs, and it's classified as a young adult, which after reading it, I was slightly surprised about. And that's really what made me want to start doing this in general. I so this book has changed my idea of what young adult really is, and I'm kind of glad about that. So my own book, the Witches trilogy, has been classified by YouTube, I mean not YouTube, Amazon, as a young adult, and I was a little worried about that because there is some adult situations, no sex, no swear words or anything like that, but people do die. There's some, I mean, it's about a book about a girl who is being sacrificed to a kraken, so, or who's trying to avoid being sacrificed to a kraken. So there are some adult themes in there, and it it worried me that that would come off wrong. But after reading this book, I feel a lot better. So this it starts chapter 1 starts with a nice little story about his grandfather telling him these tall tales, and it quickly slips into a mystery of what really happened to him, to his grandfather, that and what these tall tales were from. And then the mystery deepens as you're exploring the grandfather's life and figuring out what happened and what, you know, what all these stories he was telling him really were. And he keeps finding these pictures. And the one of the my favorite part about this book, one of my favorite parts, is that the author integrates these wonderful pictures into the story, and instead of just relying on see picture on that page, she actually describes the picture so that if the publisher hadn't put the pictures in, it still would have been a good story and you would have gotten the gist of it. I'm glad the publisher decided to put the pictures in because that adds a creeping element to the whole story. There are some pretty creepy pictures in here, like the Santa Claus. Um, yeah. So, um, and it deals with the war and death and even murder and adultery. All of these adult subjects that I didn't really think would be in a young adult book. And I should have realized that it would be because, John Green and cancer and, all of his books about coming of age and the controversies about sex between teenagers and all of that. Um, so I think young adult, just like adult books, has that grade of this one deals with actual substance issues like life and death and how we feel about that and what it does to us as we are growing, and pure fun, I guess. Um, I would classify Twilight as more of a pure fun book than a cerebral book, and that was before now. Most of my experience with young adult books was things like Twilight and The Maze Runner that were mostly about action, adventure, having fun, maybe some romance. If you want to classify Twilight as romance. I think it's kind of creepy romance, but okay. That's another story. So yes, so this has changed my idea of what young adult is, and I am going to read more books from the young adult, mostly because I enjoyed having more substance to my book than a lot of the adult books that I've been coming across lately. I do enjoy fluff books, books that are purely about sword and sorcery, or I write a bunch of sword and sorcery, so it makes sense, but dealing with the action and just going out there and finding the key to unlock the chest to summon the, that kind of thing. But sometimes you just need to think a little bit more. And this book made me think. It made me contemplate. It made me think about old pictures to start with. I mean, my boyfriend and I go antiquing a lot, and we come across old pictures, and now I'm going to be starting to look at those pictures a little closer and see, is there a story in that picture? Could I maybe write a story about that picture? Not necessarily the same kind that this author wrote, but in a similar fashion. Things like that. It made me look at the world a little bit more, I guess. Just pay attention and see things that might be out of the ordinary, and find the stories behind those things. It's, as a storyteller, you already have millions of stories in your head just crowding in, trying to find their way out, but it never hurts to have a few more. Anyway, I would recommend this book just because it is a good story. It's a great story. The last half of it is, maybe the last quarter of it is pretty much mostly action, but because once you find the answers to the mysteries, most of them, the answers anyway, not all of them, then you have a lot of action trying to, well, I'm not going to spoil that, but a bunch of action, and the conclusion leaves some more morsels open for the next book, so I will be, of course, getting the next book. But it's more satisfying. I read The Maze Runner, and I was very disappointed that there were no questions answered. I ended the book with more questions than I began the book with, and that bothered me. Whereas this one, it closes most of the loopholes, or most of the holes or most of the questions, answers most of them, and then leaves just a few here and there that perk your interest in the next book. Plus, she was nice enough to leave pictures that she is using in the next book. Like, where did they go? Like that horse. Yeah, I want to know how that fits in the story. And in that way, using the pictures like that is pure genius. Because the more pictures you see, the more you kind of wonder, well, how does that fit in? Anyway, I love this book. Read it. Enjoy it. More of this. Thanks.